Aliyah Holloway had always known her father as a hero, not because of the uniform he wore, but because of the way he lived. Officer Marcus Holloway was the kind of man who never raised his voice, yet everyone listened when he spoke. He was a gentle force, with strength in his presence and warmth in his eyes. But to Aliyah, the most fascinating thing about her father wasn't his badge, it was his best friend. Rex. Rex wasn't just a canine officer. He was family. A highly trained German shepherd with sharp instincts and unmatched loyalty. Rex had been assigned to Marcus when Aliyah was just 4 years old. At first, she was scared of the big, muscular dog with intense eyes and a quiet demeanor. But Marcus knew better. He introduced Rex not as a tool or a pet, but as part of their unit, their family. Aliyah quickly began calling him Uncle Rex, a name that made the other officers laugh, but stuck around longer than anyone expected. Rex would wait at the door when Marcus returned from night shifts and lay silently next to Aliyah's bed during thunderstorms. When she had nightmares, it was Rex's calm presence that helped her sleep again. At backyard barbecues, Rex would gently nudge her plate, asking for a hot dog. During birthday parties, he'd wear silly hats and sit patiently as kids patted him on the head. Rex didn't seem like a working dog. He seemed like an angel with paws. The bond between Marcus and Rex was something sacred. At the precinct, their reputation was unmatched. Rex had saved lives, disarmed dangerous suspects, and once even helped find a missing child in under an hour. But at home, he was something softer. Aliyah remembers one night, during a big thunderstorm, when she curled up on the couch with Rex while her father read a story aloud. It was a rare night off for Marcus, and the three of them just sat together, safe and whole. Life felt perfect in those small, quiet moments. Marcus always said that Rex was more than just a partner. He was an extension of himself. He knows my heartbeat, he once told Aliyah. We don't speak with words, but we're never out of sync. As Aliyah grew older, she came to understand what that bond meant. It wasn't just about work. It was about trust, sacrifice, and love. She would often watch her father silently check Rex's paws after a shift or rub his ears while talking about his day. She noticed how Marcus never really relaxed until Rex was home safe, and Rex never truly rested until Marcus was by his side. People in the neighborhood recognized the two of them as a team. Children would point and smile, saying, "Look, it's Officer Holloway and his dog." Adults nodded respectfully, knowing that Marcus had a reputation for doing the job with integrity, compassion, and unmatched courage. And always Rex was right there with him, eyes alert, body still, ready for anything. For Aliyah, those years built a deep foundation of safety and pride. She didn't have a traditional upbringing, but she had something better, a father who loved fiercely and served selflessly, and a loyal protector who never once left her side. But even in the most perfect chapters of life, the page eventually turns. And none of them knew that a storm was coming, a storm that would tear apart the life they had built and leave Aliyah clinging to the one soul who still remembered it all. It was a cold Thursday evening in November when everything changed. Aliyah was sitting at the kitchen table, finishing up a college assignment while her mom prepared dinner. The house felt quiet but warm, filled with the usual sounds of clinking utensils, the bubbling of a pot, and the low hum of the heater. Rex was lying nearby, ears perked, his eyes fixed on the door. Marcus had left for his usual patrol shift just a few hours earlier, giving Rex a firm pat on the back and Aliyah a quick kiss on the forehead before saying, "Be good, you two." He never came back. Later that night, just after 9 p.m., a knock came at the door, loud and urgent. Aliyah's mom wiped her hands and opened it, only to be greeted by two officers standing stiffly in the porch light. Their eyes said it all. Before their mouths could form the words, Officer Marcus Holloway had been responding to a reported break-in at a local electronics store. It was supposed to be routine. But inside, things went sideways fast. The suspect had panicked and fired. Marcus, even after being shot, had tried to control the situation, shielding civilians and trying to protect his partner. Rex had lunged at the attacker and was injured in the struggle. By the time backup arrived, Marcus was unconscious, and Rex was howling beside him. The news hit Alaya like a brick wall. She couldn't think, couldn't breathe. She felt her knees buckle, and all she could hear was her mother's sobs echoing through the hallway. It didn't seem real. How could someone like her father, a man so calm, so brave, so full of life, be gone in an instant? Rex returned home 2 days later, bandaged and quiet. He didn't bark. He didn't eat for nearly a full day. He simply lay near the door, as if still waiting for Marcus to come through it. Alaya sat next to him for hours, her hand resting gently on his head, both of them surrounded by a silence too heavy to carry alone. The funeral was held a week later. Officers from multiple departments came. Flags were lowered. Speeches were made. But what stayed etched in everyone's memory was Rex dressed in his K9 vest, limping slightly, sitting beside Marcus's casket with unwavering loyalty. Not once did he move. Not once did he look away. People in the crowd cried not just for the fallen officer, but for the bond between man and dog, one that had been severed far too soon. After the funeral, Aliyah assumed Rex would be coming home with them. It only made sense. He was family. Her father would have wanted that. But when she asked the department about adopting him, she received a response she didn't expect and certainly didn't understand. Rex is still city property, they explained. There are procedures in place. Injured K9s are retired and then put up for public auction. If you'd like to adopt him, you'll have to bid. Aliyah stared at the officer in disbelief. Bid. It felt cold, wrong, as if Rex, her father's partner, her protector, her only connection to the man they just buried, was suddenly reduced to an item on a sale list. Worse, she had no money. She was a college student, working part-time at a bookstore and barely covering tuition. How was she supposed to fight in an auction? She felt helpless, but then she looked at Rex, quietly watching her with his tired, knowing eyes. And she knew, without a doubt, that she had to try. No matter what it took, she would not let him go. Asterisk. Aliyah didn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she pictured Rex sitting in a stranger's backyard, confused and waiting for a command that would never come. The idea that someone could take him by him just because they had more money made her sick. He wasn't a piece of equipment. He wasn't property. He was family. The next morning, Aliyah returned to the precinct, hoping there had been some mistake. Maybe someone would reconsider. Maybe they didn't realize how close she and Rex were, or how much her father would have wanted them to stay together. But reality hit harder. The second time an officer at the front desk looked at her with sympathy. But no solutions. "I'm sorry," he said gently. "The department follows city rules. Once a K9 is retired, they go to public auction unless the handler requests otherwise. Since your father can't, the process continues." The word "can't" hung in the air like fog. She clenched her fists. "He would have wanted Rex with me," she whispered. "Everyone knows that." He nodded. "I believe you. But it has to go through the system." Later that week, Aliyah received official notice. Rex would be auctioned off in 2 weeks. The auction was open to the public. No restrictions. Anyone could place a bid. The notice listed the starting price like it was a regular used vehicle. Her stomach twisted. 2 weeks to come up with money she didn't have, to fight off people who saw Rex as an asset instead of a soul. She walked out of the station with the paper crumpled in her hand in tears stinging her eyes. She went home, sat beside Rex, and buried her face in his fur. "I won't let them take you," she whispered. But how? She didn't even have enough in her savings to cover her textbooks for next semester, let alone bid at a public auction. And who would donate to someone like her? She wasn't a celebrity. She wasn't famous. Just a girl trying to keep the only piece of her father that hadn't been taken from her. Still, the thought of giving up made her feel worse than the fear of failing. So that night, Aliyah opened her laptop, took a deep breath, and began to write. She wrote a letter not to a person, but to the world. She told the story of her father. Not just his badge or his sacrifice, but his Sunday jokes, his quiet acts of kindness, his way of folding laundry that made her laugh. She wrote about Rex, how he had comforted her during storms, how he had once waited by the bathroom door for over an hour while she was sick, how he had never left her father's side until the moment he was carried away. She ended the post with one line: "I'm not asking for charity. I'm asking for help to keep my father's best friend from being sold to strangers." She included a picture of Marcus, smiling in uniform with Rex sitting proudly at his side, and launched a fundraiser with a modest goal, just enough to cover the expected auction price. She hit publish, not knowing what would happen next. For a moment, the screen felt too quiet, like she had released something personal into a world too big to care. But an hour later, the first donation came in, then another and another, each one with a message. "Your story moved me. Your dad was a hero. Rex belongs with you." Aliyah sat in stunned silence as her phone lit up with notifications. The world wasn't as quiet as she thought. By the next morning, Aliyah's fundraiser had passed $2,000. She stared at the screen, overwhelmed. Not by the amount, though, that stunned her too, but by the hundreds of names attached to those donations. Some were people she knew, her dad's former colleagues, old neighbors, distant cousins, but most were strangers. People from across the country, names she'd never seen before. Some gave $5, others gave $50. One woman wrote, "My father was an officer too. I'm donating in his memory." Aliyah had never gone viral before. She barely used social media, except to share memories or photos of her dog. But now, her story was being passed from one account to another, shared in police support forums, animal rescue groups. Even a military veterans page reposted it with the caption, "No way we let this girl lose her dad's canine partner." By the end of the second day, donations had doubled. What touched Aliyah most weren't the amounts. It was the stories people shared with their donations. A retired canine handler from Arizona messaged her saying, "My dog saved my life. I know what Rex meant to your father. He should never be separated from you." A teenager from Detroit wrote, "I don't have much, but this is what I earned mowing lawns. Hope it helps." Another simply wrote, "Heroes don't get auctioned." Aliyah was no longer just a grieving daughter. She had become the voice of something bigger. People weren't just supporting her. They were standing up for a bond that went beyond rules, policies, and paperwork. The attention caught the eye of a local news station. A reporter named Lisa Ramirez reached out, asking for an interview. At first, Aliyah hesitated. The idea of putting her grief on camera felt too vulnerable. But when she looked at Rex, still limping slightly, but resting peacefully at her feet, she knew she had to do it for him. The interview aired that weekend. Aliyah sat on her living room couch, Rex's head in her lap, and told their story how her father had raised her with quiet strength, how Rex had never left his side, and how now she was fighting to keep the two of them from being separated forever. The segment ended with a shot of Rex looking straight into the camera, eyes calm, as if understanding every word. Within hours, Donations tripled. The story went national. Bigger media outlets began calling. Online articles appeared with headlines like, "Daughter fights to keep slain officer's K9 partner from being sold," and "This girl's battle for her dad's dog is breaking the internet." One retired police chief even offered to pay the full adoption price if she fell short. "But I hope the public finishes what they've started," he said. Despite the growing support, Aaliyah refused to relax. She knew auctions didn't always go as planned. People could still outbid her out of curiosity or desire to own a famous dog. She couldn't risk it. She printed out photos of her father and Rex and started visiting community centers, churches, and veteran support groups. Everywhere she went, she told their story. People listened. People cried. People helped. And throughout it all, Rex never left her side. In crowded halls, during interviews, while she typed responses late into the night, he was there, watching, waiting, trusting her, just as he had trusted her father. This mission had become more than just saving a dog. It was about honoring love, memory, and the kind of loyalty that never fades, even after death. And with every new donation, every message of support, Aaliyah felt a little stronger. She was no longer alone. The day of the auction arrived like a storm cloud, dark, heavy, and impossible to ignore. Aaliyah stood outside the small municipal building where the auction was set to take place. She wore one of her father's old jackets, the one with the faded patch from his first police unit. It still smelled faintly like him, cologne, leather, and something else she could never quite describe, but always recognized. Rex sat beside her, alert but calm, as if sensing that today mattered more than any other. Despite all the support, Aaliyah hadn't slept. She had raised nearly $17,000 through donations, more than enough for a standard retired K9 auction, but she knew nothing about the other bidders. The auction was open to the public. That meant collectors, dog breeders, or even security firms could show up. To them, Rex might be a trophy or a tool. To her, he was the last piece of her father's heart. As they entered the hall, Aaliyah was surprised to see the room already half full. Officers she recognized stood along the walls. Neighbors, reporters, strangers who had followed her story online. Some held signs. Others wore shirts with her father's badge number. There was even a small group of veterans seated together. One of them saluted her when she walked in. She felt her throat tighten. The auctioneer stepped up to the podium. He looked out over the crowd and cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. As per city policy, we are auctioning off retired police K9 Rex today. Standard procedure applies." A murmur went through the crowd. Aaliyah could feel every heartbeat in her chest. But then, something happened. Before bidding could begin, an older man in uniform, Assistant Chief Lawson, stood up from the front row. He walked slowly to the podium, whispered something to the auctioneer, then turned to face the crowd. "There's been a change," he said clearly. "We've reviewed Officer Marcus Holloway's service record, and upon consulting with legal and city representatives this morning, we've made a decision." He paused, locking eyes with Aaliyah. K9 Rex is no longer considered standard inventory. He is being formally retired into the care of Officer Holloway's next of kin. The room went silent, for his service and for the love and loyalty he showed Marcus Holloway. "We believe Rex deserves to go home with family." Gasps filled the air, then claps, then cheers. Aaliyah covered her mouth, stunned. She turned to Rex, who tilted his head curiously, then rested his chin on her knee, as if saying, "Told you we'd make it." She walked forward slowly, legs trembling, and shook Lawson's hand. He leaned in and whispered, "Your dad would be proud. The way you fought for him, and for Rex, that's the kind of strength we can't teach in training." Tears rolled down Alia's cheeks as she looked out at the crowd, still clapping, some openly crying. Her story had started as a desperate attempt to save her father's partner. But now it had become something else, a reminder to the world that love, loyalty, and legacy can't be sold to the highest bidder. After the ceremony, she walked out of the building with Rex at her side, this time not as a temporary companion, but as a forever guardian. The sky had cleared in the days following the auction. Alia found herself navigating a new rhythm, one filled with relief, quiet gratitude, and the unmistakable weight of responsibility. Rex was home. Truly home. No more uncertainty. No more questions. Just two souls healing together, side by side. But Alia couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger still needed to be done. Her father had lived his life in service, protecting others, training Rex with patience and pride, and making sure that even on his worst days, he left the world a little better. Now that Rex was officially hers, she felt that same duty growing inside her. She started taking Rex on walks through the neighborhood again, just like her father used to. The community noticed. Children would run up, eager to pet the hero dog. Parents waved from porches. Some even brought Rex treats. It was as if Marcus's spirit walked beside her through those streets, keeping them safe. Then, one afternoon, Alia received a letter in the mail. It was from the city mayor's office. Inside was a personal note. Your story reminded this city of something we often forget, that courage comes in many forms. Your father served with honor. You fought with heart. We'd like to invite you to speak at this year's Fallen Officers Memorial event. Alia had never given a public speech before. The idea terrified her. But as she looked down at Rex, peacefully, curled up at her feet, she remembered how her dad used to say, "Real courage is standing up when your voice shakes." She agreed. On the day of the memorial, the sky was clear and blue, just like it had been on the day of the auction. A large crowd had gathered at the city's central square. Officers in dress blues, families of the fallen, and members of the public stood in respectful silence. Rows of chairs faced a stage flanked by flags. A large screen behind the podium displayed names and faces of those who had served and sacrificed, including Marcus Holloway. Alia stepped up to the microphone, her heart pounding. Rex walked calmly beside her, then sat at attention as if sensing that this moment mattered. She looked out at the sea of faces, took a breath, and began. My father believed in quiet strength. He never raised his voice, never made a big show of things, but he showed up every day, for his city, for his family, for Rex. She paused, eyes glistening. When we lost him, it felt like the world had stopped. But Rex, he stayed. He stayed by my side. He mourned with me. And when the system said he wasn't mine to keep, all of you helped me fight to bring him home. She told the story briefly, powerfully, of how a dog once trained to protect had ended up being the one thing protecting her from falling apart. She spoke about loyalty, about legacy, and about how no act of love is ever wasted. When she finished, the crowd rose to their feet. Some clapped. Others wiped their eyes. A few officers saluted. Rex didn't move. He just looked up at her, his calm, steady gaze saying everything words could not. That night, as they returned home, Alia sat on the porch with Rex curled up beside her. The stars above twinkled like they were trying to say something. I think he saw it all, she whispered, because somehow, even though her father was gone, his presence had never felt more alive. In every step she took. In every heartbeat she felt. Most of all, in the eyes of the dog he left behind. Weeks passed, but for Alia and Rex, life didn't slow down. If anything, it deepened. After the memorial speech, people began reaching out more than ever. Teachers, students, retired officers, even other canine handlers. They didn't just want to thank her. They wanted to know more. They wanted to help. Some asked her to speak at local schools. Others invited her and Rex to community events. What started as a fight to keep a dog had grown into something that now touched lives far beyond her neighborhood. Alia didn't set out to become a symbol, but people saw in her something they needed, a reminder that courage didn't always wear a uniform. Sometimes it looked like a young woman with tired eyes, holding a leash in one hand and memories in the other. Meanwhile, Rex began to change too. The limp from his injury faded with care and rest. His eyes, once heavy with confusion after her father's passing, now lit up whenever Alia called his name. He followed her everywhere, from morning walks to evening porch sits. He didn't need to guard anymore, but he still watched her every move with quiet devotion. One day, while visiting a local veterans center, something unexpected happened. Rex, usually calm, pulled away from Alia's side and approached an older man in a wheelchair who sat quietly near a wall. The man barely looked up, his expression distant, almost hollow. But when Rex nudged his hand and rested his head on the man's lap, something shifted. The man slowly looked down. His fingers moved across Rex's fur. His breathing calmed. A staff member whispered to Alia, "That man hasn't spoken in weeks." Alia knelt beside them, and for the next hour, she and Rex sat with the man. No words were needed. Just presence. Just peace. That moment planted a seed. What if Rex's story, their story, could be used to help others heal? Later that night, Alia did something bold. She wrote an email to a therapy dog certification program. She explained Rex's history, his calm temperament, and how he had already started bringing comfort to others without being asked. To her surprise, the organization responded with encouragement. They even offered to sponsor part of Rex's training, having followed their story online. Over the next several weeks, Alia and Rex began the certification process. Training was simple for him. His discipline had never faded. What was new was the way he was taught to respond to trauma, to lay his head gently on someone's lap, to nuzzle without startling, to remain still in emotional moments. Alia joined every session. For her, it wasn't just about teaching. Rex, it was about learning how to guide people through pain the same way she had been guided. By the end of the month, Rex officially passed. He was now not just a retired police dog. He was a certified therapy animal. Their first assignment was at a local hospital's grief support group. When Alia walked in with Rex, a hush fell over the room. She didn't give a speech that day. She simply sat on the floor with Rex and let him move at his own pace. He stopped beside a teenage girl whose eyes were red from crying. She had lost her older brother in a car accident. Without a word, Rex laid beside her. She leaned forward and hugged him. She didn't let go for a long time. And that was when Alia realized Rex hadn't just saved her from losing everything. He was now helping others find something they thought was gone forever. Hope. The months that followed felt like a new beginning, not just for Alia and Rex, but for everyone touched by their Rex journey. Word of Rex's work as a therapy dog spread quickly. More hospitals, schools, and community centers invited them to visit. Wherever they went, people saw more than just a dog and his owner. They saw a living symbol of hope, courage, and healing. But for Alia, it was never about the spotlight or the recognition. It was about honoring her father's memory in the best way she knew, how by continuing the bond he had started and sharing that love with the world. One evening, as she and Rex walked through the park near her childhood home, she paused and looked around at the familiar trees, the fading sunlight, and the quiet hum of life around her. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, worn photo of her father in his uniform. She held it tightly and whispered, "We did it, Dad. We made sure you never had to say goodbye." Rex nudged her hand gently, as if reminding her that the journey was far from over, because the truth was this: the story of Marcus Holloway, his daughter, and the dog who stood by both their sides was not just a tale of loss and fight. It was a story about the power of love to transform pain into purpose. And as long as Alea held that love in her heart, as long as Rex's paws touched the ground beside her, her father's spirit would never fade. In the months that followed, Alea started a foundation in her father's name, dedicated to supporting families of fallen officers and providing therapy dogs to those in need. She partnered with local police departments and animal rescue groups, ensuring that no canine partner would ever be separated from the family they loved. Every time she saw a new dog with a badge, or a family smiling through tears because of the comfort Rex brought, she felt the same fierce pride her father must have felt when he first held Rex's leash. One afternoon, at a city ceremony honoring fallen heroes, Alea stood again on stage, this time as a leader and advocate. She spoke of courage, loyalty, and the bonds that don't break, even in the face of tragedy. As she finished, Rex sat quietly beside her, the same steady presence he had been since day one. The crowd erupted into applause. Afterwards, a young girl approached her, holding a small stuffed dog. "I want to be like you when I grow up," she said softly. Alea smiled, kneeling down to meet her eyes. "You already are." That night, back at home, Alea looked at Rex and whispered, "We kept the promise, boy. We kept it." Rex rested, his head on her lap, his eyes full of trust and love. And somewhere, beyond the stars in the sky, Marcus Holloway watched on, proud, peaceful, and forever part of the story he had helped write. A story of love. A story of loyalty. A story that would never, ever end.